Welcome back inside our SI.com studios for this week's video mailbag, where we take your questions via email and the Twitter using the hashtag Mannix Mailbag. Question number one, if you're the GM in Philly and we land the first pick in the draft, do you draft for need or do you trade the pick? Well, that's a great question because I think Philadelphia will have a big decision to make if they wind up with the first overall pick in the draft. The consensus guy is Jahlil Okafor from Duke. I don't think anyone's going to be able to eclipse him in terms of overall appeal over the next couple of months. But Okafor also plays the same position as Joel Embiid, and I don't think either one of those players is necessarily a power forward. So it's a difficult decision for Sam Hinkie in Philadelphia to ultimately have to make. I think one of the two players, whether it's Okafor on draft night or Embiid, will wind up being traded because I just don't think you can play those two alongside each other. And I do think that, especially in the case of Okafor, you could see a sweetheart deal come in that a team like Philadelphia, which is desperate for depth at many positions, simply can't turn down. Question number two, what are the fundamental issues with the Wiz besides lack of range? Does it look like they've quit on Randy? Well, I tell you what, this Washington team has looked terrible over the last 2 months of the season, 14-17 in their last 31 games. There are a lot of issues they're dealing with right now. Depth has been a problem, especially behind John Wall. This team tried hard to extract Jarrett Jack from Brooklyn before the deadline, but Brooklyn's inability to make the deal for Reggie Jackson scuttled that potential deal at the last second, and they're hoping that when Ramon Sessions comes in, he'll provide the kind of depth that Andre Miller simply wasn't over the last couple of months. But this team is having problems all over the board. Defensively, they're not as good as they were. Offensively, they're really struggling for answers. The injury to Bradley Beal's left them without one of their best players. Have they quit on Randy Whitman? I'm not quite ready to say that just yet, but this is certainly a referendum season for Randy Whitman. I think he's got to get this team deep into the postseason if he's going to keep his job for next season. Question number three, is Rajon Rondo still a top 5 point guard? Well, it's a good question for me because I've thought that Rondo has been a top 5 point guard for a long time. This season, certainly not. Injuries have affected it. Inconsistency has affected it. This guy has dropped back more to the 10 to 15 range than he was in the top 5. But I still think there is time for Rondo to prove his worth in Dallas. This guy is still one of the best postseason point guards in recent history. Get him into the playoffs, put him in the type of situation where he tends to thrive. He can have a big impact for Dallas, but he's got to get more comfortable offensively. Rick Carlisle has said numerous times they want Rondo to be more aggressive. And during his last couple of months in Boston, you didn't see an aggressive Rajon Rondo. If he can get back to the aggressive playmaker we saw during Boston's deep playoff runs, this guy will be a huge asset to Dallas. Question number four, what impact will Kevin Garnett have on the Timberwolves? Well, on the floor, KG's not going to have a huge impact. The guy is really only a 20-minute-per-game player at this stage of his career, and on a Minnesota team bound for the lottery, I think his impact's going to be negligible. But the reason Minnesota acquired him has nothing to do with what he can do during games. Minnesota acquired him because of the kind of impact he can have on some of its young players. I'm talking about Andrew Wiggins, Anthony Bennett, Ricky Rubio, even Nikola Pekovic. This guy is one of the best practice players in basketball history. He's one of the most intense competitors in basketball history. For a young team still trying to find itself, having a mentor like Kevin Garnett is going to be huge for its overall development. They want his work ethic to rub off on some of its young players so they can start acting like Kevin Garnett over the next few years of their careers. That's it for this week's SI.com video mailbag. As always, you can submit your questions via email or on Twitter using the hashtag Mannix Mailbag.